All right. Hi, I am talking to Micah Hart, and he is here with Jewish Geography on Zoom. What's your official name, Micah? What do you call the business?
Well, it's funny because we're in the middle of a name change.
Okay. So what was it and what's it going to be?
Well, the game is called Jewish Geography Zoom Racing, but I sort of started it just kind of for fun, and as it's kind of grown into something that is my job now, I probably can't trademark something with Zoom in it.
Right.
So I'm still working to figure out what the name is going to be. I haven't quite settled on it yet, but it's going to be changing. So, for now, it's still Jewish Geography Zoom Racing.
Got it. Zoom Racing. Okay. I left out the Zoom Racing. That's key. Okay. So Micah and I went to camp together. We went to Gucci. That's Gucci with one C. And for the record, it's an acronym. So we go way back and we both relate to the camp days. And if I remember correctly, your dad was a camp director.
That's right. My dad was the director at Jacobs Camp in Mississippi and didn't want us, his children, to be staff brats all summer, to always have to be the camp director's kids. And so
I love that.
And Ron Klotz, who was the director of Gucci when we were there, were really good friends. And he felt like Gucci would be, the next best thing to Jacobs. So I would go a month to Gucci and then a month to Jacobs.
Oh, so you did go to Jacobs?
Yep. I went to both, and it was great, and I loved both. But Gucci was different because I wasn't the camp director's son, so I didn't have people coming up to me all day long asking me what's for dinner and what are we doing tonight. Like, I don't know, I'm 9. Like,
are you allowed to say what's your favorite?
They're both my favorites in different ways. Jacobs was my home, and I got to see my friends at Jacobs all year round. And as I got older, it was sad to me that I had these great friendships from Gucci and I never got to see them. And I always felt like I had severe FOMO in high school for Gucci. But Gucci was different because, one, I wasn't the camp director's kid, but two, like, I was a Southerner. And I was like an exotic thing at Gucci. And people, thought I talked funny, which, for them, I'm sure I did. But like, my accent is nothing compared to most people who live in Mississippi.
Right. So it's pretty mellow.
That always made me laugh. But I loved them both equally, but in different ways.
Got it. Okay. All right. So tell me, I want to hear about what you're doing now. And kind of give us like the backstory on the origin of this project. We got to introduce Campfires and Color Wars.
Sure.
And also what you were doing professionally. So like, where were you pre-pandemic?
Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit. Most of my career has been spent in digital and social marketing, or really content marketing. I worked for the Atlanta Hawks for a long time. I ran digital for them. I worked most recently for Buffalo Wild Wings. I was the head of social media for that. And so I've kind of always been in content. I started a podcast called Campfires and Color Wars about 4 years ago. And it's a summer camp memories storytelling podcast. And I started it because, one, content's just kind of like what I know and what I enjoy. And from having grown up at camp, like, it's fun to create things. And I found that in adult life, I just didn't have the opportunity to talk about camp that much, even though, as anyone who went to camp knows, like, all I want to do is talk about camp.
Right.
That happened at camp. And when I'm with my camp friends, that's all we do is tell stories. And so the podcast is my way to bring that back into my life and have a reason to get to talk to people about camp. And so that's really fun. I've been doing that for a few years. This game show, it's interesting. Like, people always like, how did you come up with it? And it honestly was like one of those like aha moments. Like, I can tell you exactly. I was running one morning and I was about to turn onto my street and it just kind of like clicked. This idea of a game show where people, it's for Jews, but it could be for anybody. are given the name of a random Jewish person that they don't know, and they race on the Zoom to see who can get that person to join the Zoom first. But you can't use any kind of social media whatsoever. It's all just 6 degrees of separation. And the joke in the Jewish community is that if it's 6 degrees of separation for like normal society, it's like 3 degrees at most in the Jewish community. And I just thought it would be fun. I thought it'd be a fun thing to try. And so I got some friends and we did a pilot episode and everybody had a blast doing it. So I was like, yeah, let's try it. And I already sort of had a platform for it because of the podcast.
Right.
So I started it in mid-April and pretty quickly realized that I was onto something. It's a lot of fun. It works really well right now because we're all dealing with the pandemic and everybody's home, or should be. And so, in theory, everybody is available to play. If somebody who's a friend of yours texts you and says, hey, can you help me out, join the Zoom call real quick, you shouldn't have many reasons why you can't do that at this moment.
Right.
So we've been doing it for going on 4 months now, and it just continues to grow and evolve. And I got laid off from my job at Buffalo Wild Wings back in May, which I would say has turned into a blessing in a lot of different ways, but in part because it has allowed me to really dive into this thing. And as it continues to grow, it has kind of become now my job is running this game show and all of the different outlets that it could become. I mean, we have 2 shows a week that we do. And then we are also doing private events for organizations, either as fundraisers to help them raise money, like summer camps, who are, just decimated by not having camp this summer, obviously. But we're also doing sort of what we call fundraisers, which are just like engagement plays for different organizations. And it's been a ton of fun. I'm having a blast doing it, and I'm figuring it all out as I go.
Okay, you said so many things there that I loved. There were a couple things that really resonated with me. Like I've done digital content marketing for years. And there was one point where I found where I just wasn't getting to do in my job what I loved. So I started a food and lifestyle blog just because I wanted to get back into writing more and talking more about things that were my passions, but to do it in, the way that I have these professional skills. So I can really relate to you starting up that initial podcast as a way to like use your business knowledge to, kind of explore your passion more. And the other thing I loved that really resonated, I mean, I loved it all, but I love what you're doing, which is why I wanted to ask you about it. But I loved how you said that you got the idea when you were running. So just a plug for working out. And so many people have been picking up running during the pandemic. But yeah. I mean, almost every idea I've ever had in my life or business in the last 20 years has come in a run.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'd say running or shower for me.
Yeah, but running's longer than the shower, I would hope. So there's a lot of time for ideas. So I loved that. And yeah, okay. So let me just understand. So you have the podcast and are you still doing the podcast or now you're just doing the game show?
I am still doing the podcast. The podcast is a labor of love. It's definitely a passion project. It hasn't been to this moment a revenue generator,
right?
Which could change. I mean, I am getting much more attention for things that I'm doing right now because of this game show than I was beforehand. It was always just something that I did for fun when I had time outside of my regular job. But the game show has, far superseded, the podcast in terms of like attention and word of mouth and all that stuff. But at the same time, I would say that the podcast has a ton of potential. I just haven't had the time to really build it into something more. And I haven't had the desire to do so.
Right.
With this game show, like I see pretty clearly what the opportunity is, and I'm going for it.
Okay, so walk me through what that looks like. How did this turn into a revenue generator? And at what point did you realize that, okay, this is more than just me entertaining my camp friends on Zoom?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, I mean, I'm still figuring it out for sure. But I've started to get sponsors for the show. So again, we do Saturday night at 9 Eastern and Wednesday night at 9 Eastern. So I have sort of traditional sponsorship model for shows. People, pay to be a sponsor and they get logo inclusion and readers, or or they integrate into the show in different ways. So that's a revenue stream. And as the show grows, I hope to continue to build that out more. I actually just closed a deal with Hebrew Union College to do a long-term partnership with them. So they'll be sponsoring shows, on a consistent basis moving forward.
Wow.
So that's part of it. And then the other part of it for sure is these private games that I'm doing for different organizations. I mean, synagogues and nonprofits, like they're all trying to engage their audiences right now and trying to figure out how to do that in a virtual world. Most of the programming they're doing, and I'm not knocking the programming they're doing, it's just fatigue, right? Like you can only sit on so many Zoom calls before you get tired of it. So they're not really getting great engagement. And this game show has become so engaging that it really, I mean, I say this and I'm generally speaking very humble, but this is just what I'm seeing in doing these is that they're getting, tenfold engagement on doing a game for their communities over what they would get otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So that continues to grow. And again, I'm still learning what's the price point for those things. But that's definitely where the biggest growth for now is doing, private customized games
Okay.
for organizations.
Wow. Okay. And then what does the marketing look like that you've had to put into this, and what's your goal for what that marketing looks like over this next year? Because also, as you're figuring it out, you don't really know what this next year is going to look like.
That is true.
So that's a big challenge for a business that's new in this pandemic.
Yeah. So, I'm certainly playing off of the things that I've learned over the course of, close to 20 years in the digital space. What I am fortunate to have, and have been fortunate to have at various stops in my career, is there is a community building around this game. And, interacting with that community and growing and nurturing it is how this thing is growing and how it will continue to grow. Word of mouth. I'm not doing any marketing of the game right now, other than just posting about it on the Facebook page. And honestly, what I'm doing right now doesn't even make sense, because everything right now lives on the pages of the podcast, and not the game doesn't have its own channel yet, which it will. I just haven't done it yet because I don't know the name yet and just all this other stuff. But the word of mouth around it has been incredible.
Right.
And really, the marketing is the people who are enjoying it telling their friends about it. I mean, that is how it is spreading. And as a marketer, that's the holy grail. You want that more than you want anything, because people trust their friends and family before they trust any advertisement they see or anything like that. I mean, that's what you see on Facebook. Hey, I need somebody to fix my sink. Does anyone have any recommendations? That's how people get their information these days. So I'm very fortunate that is how the game is being marketed. And so my challenge over the next year is to harness that power and figure out how to keep growing that community and making them feel like they have ownership over this thing. And the truth is, the community is what makes the game.
Right.
The game itself is really fun, but the experience of watching the game and interacting with other people who are watching is as much a part of why it is a success, if not more so, than the game itself. And you asked, like, when did I start to realize that this was a thing? I started to realize it when I saw what was happening in the Facebook comments during gameplay.
Well, tell us about how many viewers you're getting and comments you're getting.
Yeah, so I will admit that I don't have a ton of expertise in streaming and like what you would consider to be like a huge audience and what's not, and how are you analyzing the numbers that we're getting. But right now I get somewhere between 300 and 400 concurrent views at a time.
So, okay. And then what are your total views?
Right. And then by the end of the night, typically Garden Variety Show is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 views. And then in the next 2 or 3 days afterwards, it tends to double or triple.
Right. I was going to say, I've seen 5,000 views on there.
Yeah. So I've learned a couple things. One, I've learned that people will go back and watch it if they didn't see it live.
Yeah. It lives on your page.
Which is interesting to me because I wouldn't have thought that would be the case. I think of it as very much a live experience. And then the engagement during the game is crazy. I mean, we get upwards of 1,000 comments during the game of people who are just. I come from a sports background, and so we always call Twitter the sports bar of the internet. Like, you're watching, if you're a sports fan and you enjoy, Twitter, you're on Twitter while you're watching the Final Four, the Super Bowl, or just your team's favorite game, and you're just having a conversation with other people who are watching the same thing, and people are cracking jokes, commenting on it. And that is exactly what is playing out in the Facebook comments during the live stream. And so that's the community. And people are reconnecting with friends of theirs from the past. And that, to me, is really the secret sauce of this show. Is I think before even the pandemic, we were all looking for ways to reconnect, to connect in general, especially people our age. We have young children. We don't have a lot of spare time. We have people who we love, but we just don't have time to see or talk to whenever. And this game show has provided the opportunity for that to happen.
Right.
So you're seeing people joining the game who you haven't seen in a while, but you love. And you're seeing people in the Facebook comments that are friends of yours from the past that you haven't talked to in forever and you love. And that spirit of community and reconnection is without question what has fueled the interest in the game, and why I think it has staying power even beyond when, knock on wood, this pandemic is under control and people are able to get back out into the world safely. Right.
You know what's so interesting about what happened to you is that a lot of people, they have an idea, and then they have to narrow down their idea and figure out who's their audience for their idea. And you had the exact opposite experience. And I think that really is telling of what can be really successful in marketing in 2020, is that you had your audience and then you found an idea around them for something that you knew they would need because you're in your audience. You're one of these overnight camp alumni adults, which, if you never went to overnight camp, it's hard to understand, but like,
it's true.
Camps can be a cult, especially the one we went to, where it's your whole world. And then you don't grow out of that just because you age out of camp. It formed you. And so then there's this audience that you're tapping into. Have you seen anybody else really serve this adult alumni camp audience? Like, I can think of some of those camp retreats.
Yeah,
but I never saw those really catch on. Maybe I just don't know.
Starting to. I think that's a huge growth industry for camps. Is these adult retreat weekends. I'll say a couple things. One, without question, like understanding your audience and how to cater to what they want, like that's what every marketer, what every business needs to do, right? And what I've definitely, I mean, my philosophy is like, you don't need to be the end all be all to everybody. You
Right.
just need to be the thing for your audience. And if you can build a hardcore, passionate fan base for what you do, you don't need millions of people. You might only need, 5,000 people. If it's the right 5,000 who will do whatever it is that you ask of them. I mean, within reason. And so I think we see that in marketing and entertainment and everything is like this nicheification, I guess.
Right. Which is not a word, but what we get it.
Yeah,
we'll use it.
I mean. Yeah. That's the key is like find the right niche audience for what you're doing and then give them what they want. And that's definitely what the point of the podcast has been is there are hundreds of thousands of people who went to overnight camp and they may not have all gone to Jewish camp. They might've gone to scout camp or church camp or fat camp, like whatever different kinds of camp they went to. But there are universal things within those experiences that everybody who went to camp can relate to. And that's the audience for it. And if you didn't go to camp, then you probably aren't interested in my podcast. And that's okay. And I think, with any content marketing, like that's what you have to do is figure out what information, what entertainment, what value proposition is relevant to your audience, and then just start giving it to them and build that relationship over time.
Right. So it's something that first it became something that you could only do now, right? Because with digital marketing, it's only in recent years that, we gave so much of our information away to Google and to social media that you can find people who are Jewish and love summer camp and love cats and live in the South. Like that's a thing,
Yeah.
So if that's you could serve that audience. But so at first it was like, wow, this is really powerful. But I would argue that now, and there are whole podcasts on this. I don't know if you listen to The Passion Economy, but it's new from Adam Davidson, and it's really good. It's very new, just a few weeks old even. It's so good. But what it is he's saying that in order to succeed now, you have to be doing what you're doing, which is narrow down exactly who you're serving and then like hyper serve them with something that you're already passionate about.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that has certainly been my experience on this journey that I'm on right now is like, I've worked harder. I think I worked pretty hard at previous jobs, but I've worked harder on this thing in the last couple months than anything I've ever worked on. And like, it's overwhelming at times, but like, I'm having such a good time doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that I care about and it's my baby. Like, I love doing it. Every time we do a show, I'm having a blast the entire time. And, whatever bumps in the road that there have been and will be, like, I don't mind investing the time and energy trying to solve them because I am doing something that I care deeply about.
And it's supporting you and your family right now, which is just wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, this has been so interesting to me, and I can't wait to see where it's at in a year, what the name is, where you head with this. Like,
I hope you have a name in a year.
Out in so many ways. You're gonna have a killer email list distribution, which I don't know that you would ever sell it, but I can think of a lot of people who would like to get their hands on something like that. Okay, so I just want to. I try and end with one thing that really sparked your inspiration this week, because my whole brand is Sparker, and it's mostly about sparking ideas. But truth be told, since we're talking about camp, it's also about the whole fire and spark and flame, and that's just, I like campfires. So secretly, it's also really about camp. So yeah, is there one thing that this week you found that doesn't have to be in your work, it could be in your life, that just really sparked some inspiration for you?
Yes. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a good answer or not. But this is the first thing that came to mind. This is kind of deep, so take it for what it's worth. But my wife and I have been watching I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is this true crime HBO documentary miniseries.
Okay.
That's super sad and tragic. It's about a serial killer. But the woman who was writing a book about it, spoiler alert, died while writing the book. And
wow.
her husband, her husband's Patton Oswalt, who's a famous comedian. They helped get the book across the finish line, and this was an unsolved. Sorry, I'm getting way off topic. The point is, this documentary is about her journey in writing and reporting this book, and then everything that happened, and then they ended up catching the guy, in large part based on her research as just like a writer and not as a policeman or a detective.
Right.
And the documentary is about the search for this guy and the killings and all that stuff, but it's also about her and her personal journey. And she had a very difficult relationship with her mom. And at one point she writes, and they talk about this in the documentary, her mom died some years ago. And she said, I don't know anyone who would have enjoyed this book more than my mom. And at the same time, I don't know if I could have written it while she was still alive.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, wow, that is so interesting. Just family dynamics and all that stuff. And I feel like in pandemic in particular, when all we spend time with basically is our families at best, I don't know, that's just really sat with me and made me think about how difficult and challenging it is to be a parent and to be a child and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so this show for me is a lot to do with family, because my sister and my brother-in-law are my co-hosts, and my other sister is also involved. And my parents are constantly texting about it. So, like I said, I don't know if that's inspiration necessarily, but it just really stuck with me and made me think about how interesting our paths are based on how we were raised and how we get along with our families and all this stuff. So
right.
Like I said, I don't know if that really answers the question.
Inspiration. Yeah, I love that. Okay, tell us where people can find you, because you mentioned that there's no official name yet, but that it's on your podcast URL, so, and your Facebook page. So tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so the podcast is Campfires and Color Wars. You can find it on Facebook. We're also on Twitter and on Instagram. If you just search Campfires and Color Wars, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Micah Hart, MICAHHART.
Okay, and I'll put it in the show notes too. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. And it's definitely so good to chat with you and just see an old camp friend and talk about camp.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay, take it easy. Bye, Micah.
Bye, Wendy.
Thanks.